today we're going to be working on my giraffe canvas, and it's a big canvas, so I'm going to be showing it to you in sections as we're working. Both of the giraffes are exactly the same. Okay, so when I give you the instruction for one, it's the same instruction for the other one. It's a mama and baby, and all I did was take the pattern and I flipped it, you know, made it smaller for the baby, so, and then large for the mama. So let's see, what I want to do is go back up to the face. I'd like to get the faces totally done. So let's go back up there again. Okay, now for the, let's go ahead and get these top little sections. We're going to get those totally done. Sometimes I liked them to have a little burnt sienna, sometimes a little brown. You know, all of the different giraffes will vary in the colors that they have. I just want a combination of earth tones in there that are going to go from dark to light. You know, from the bottom will be darker, top will be lighter. So let's just use our rake brush to do this. And what we want is we want to just kind of set up our colors kind of in order of dark to light. So if I have, you know, I have black would be my darkest, burnt umber, I've got burnt sienna, I've got raw sienna, and then it goes into, you know, like my beige or my white colors. So for the hair up in the horns here, I definitely want to go darker, but if I want to get, you know, another color in there, I sure could. So let's get, I like to start with the burnt umber, and then I look to see if I want something else in the middle. So I'm going to use the rake brush, just thin that down, and I'm going to pull some of the burnt umber in the bottom half. And I want to kind of attach that now right into the horns. So you're going to pull a little bit of hairs with the burnt umber beyond, so it looks like it's attaching to the skin area and not just puff balls on top of his head. So you're kind of overlapping, you know, where the horn is and where you started with the color of that ball, and then add some coming up in. And then I can decide, do I want, you know, another color in there? If my lighter color is showing up too much, maybe I want a little bit either more raw sienna or even some of the burnt sienna in there. But see, if I just go in the middle with my raw sienna, see how that tones down those white lines at the bottom ends of them. And then you just have to like the color. So if you want to pull some, and I'm taking artistic license because usually they're darker. But if you wanted to get a little bit of the color from, you know, the spots, it wouldn't hurt to put some of that up there also. I want to get just a little darker yet at the very bottom here. I'm going to put the burnt umber one more time. Okay. So, and I like color, so I am going to do a little bit of the burnt sienna in there just because I like color. So, but probably just a little bit in the middle, just to tint it a little bit. Not to take over, just a little hint of it. Kind of warms it up a little bit. And you'll do the same thing with the baby. You know, start with the burnt umber. Get that in the bottom area, but make sure you pull some little tiny hairs into the horn so it looks like it's attaching better. Get some color in the middle. Use a little raw sienna. And if I want to tint with a little bit of burnt sienna, I can. Now, if I took away too much of the, lighter tips, I just go back, add some more. Otherwise, this is your final stage for the horns. I'm just putting a little touch of burnt sienna, just a few little strokes, just to add a little more color into those areas. So the top of the horns are done. And then I did float some burnt umber just on one side of the horns. So I picked the left side, a little corner load of the burnt umber, and just float that down the left side of the horns. Deepen those a little bit. And I want to float some burnt umber on the ears where they touch the face. And I can go right on through that whole edge. But on the top of the ear, I like to kind of, taper it up a little bit. And then next to the face so that I have a little bit better transition with the ear. But I'll go right on through to the bottom, right off the bottom edge of the ear there, all the way through. That'll set it back away from the face better, and do the same thing on both ears. Go next to the face. Taper it a little bit higher on that top edge of the ear, and then next to the face. And that's the final stage for the ears. Horns and ears will be done. So if you needed to do any adjusting of color afterwards, you still can. But I suggest you wait till everything is done before you even worry about that. I like to see how everything plays against everything else before I make those decisions. Okay, then I also want to put some to separate the mouth from the muzzle. Going to float, in the opening of the mouth area there. Burnt umber. Get that a little bit darker. Just kind of taper it up on the side. And then I want to get some on the muzzle, or I mean on the nostrils. So I'm going to zero in for that. I'm going to get closer so you can see what I got. Okay, so you know how we shaded the bottom edge of that one side? We want to deepen that now so that it looks like that shadow continues right on from inside the nose, and your burnt umber is going to blend right in. I got just a little bit of a hook right there towards the center so that it'll make it look like the other side is puffing out a little bit more. So catching that bottom edge again, get that to blend right in, give just a little bit of a hook towards the center. Okay, then I want to do a little bit on the outsides of the nostrils, but keep it skinny. So I've got kind of taper it at the top of the nostril and come down the outer edge, and then get that to just blend right in with the shadow you just did. Don't want to, I want it to kind of look like it all melted together from that outside edge. So just try to soften those two shadows together. So outside the edge, come on down to where we just shaded, but then soften those shadows together so that you don't see a hard line anymore. So we did the outer edges, blended it down to the bottom. Then we're going to go in the middle of the nose and do next to the edge in the middle, but we're going to kind of round it. When we leave that tip, we kind of want to do a little bit of a back-to-back float right in the center of the nose there so that the center is darker. So you're going to go up against the edge, but once you hit that corner, you're going to flip your brush so that you're blending the shadow in the middle between the nose. So along the edge first, and then flip my edge when I get to that corner. So then I've got shadow between the nose in the middle there, because that dipped down in there. And then if you can kind of just round out where you started up above too, so that it just kind of melts together a little easier. Okay, now on mine, I feel like I've got too abrupt of a edge on each side. So I'm just going to do just a little wash of this and kind of curve it down to take the edge off that abrupt ending on the outer edges where I stopped with that shadow. I just want to kind of taper it in to the outer edge. So see how that kind of rounds out the muzzle a little bit better. It was just jumping out at me because it was all highlighted. Let me show you that again. And I want to deepen the shadows in the wrinkles of the eyes. It goes exactly where I put it the first time around, but it's a lot skinnier this time, so I'm just catching a little bit of color on the outside edge of my angle brush, and I'm not really blending it, but I want to get, like, you know, the top of the eyelid again. I just want to deepen those same areas I did the first time. And you might need to, you know, switch to a smaller angle brush to do it. Deepen all those same shadows in the wrinkles and the eyelid. Same spot as you did the raw sienna. This time I'm just darkening a little bit with the burnt umber. And I had a little bit under the eye too.
And then I gotta turn it upside down.
Still just using burnt umber for all my darker shading. Now I've got to turn it upside down to do the wrinkles above the eye. And I want to do all the eye area first and then decide if I want more in some of the areas on the rest of the face. But the eyes have to get done first in order to be able to tell if you want more other places. So little corner load of the burnt umber, and I'm going to use that on the bottom of the wrinkles. So remember that first wrinkle above the eye, the shadows kind of come together there. They go back to back. Then the next one, it's on the bottom of the wrinkle. And then above the wrinkle on the face. When I'm loading the color, I'm only getting the outside edge of the brush and not dipping a whole bunch into the corner. That way it's almost like I'm kind of outlining with a float, because I don't need the color to come out very far. I want it just mainly in the deepest crevice. The area between the nose and the eyes, that really recedes down in. And so I do need to get like a wash of the burnt umber in there. So if I were to finish going next to the eyes, start there first, but it really gets kind of filled in between the nose and the eyes. Just kind of walk it over till you run into the nose. And just, do light layers to start with, but that's got to be a darker color between the eyes and the nose, because it really dips down in. And then I would probably go ahead and just, pull a little bit down on the outside edge of that big nose area too. And it's more like I'm just kind of putting a wash in there. I'm not trying to get a hard line or a heavy float. I just want it to kind of transition a little bit better. So you might have to just kind of flip your brush a little bit each direction so you don't end up with a hard line. Because remember, we floated up kind of like a back-to-back when we did that nose. And then really it's up to you how predominant you want the top of that bump. It really is a bold bump. I mean, it really does pop out there. So if you want that to pop out more, you're going to have to do a back-to-back there too. So I just kind of flip the brush back and forth. You might want to moisten so that you have time to blend. And I'm just doing more of a wash, not heavy color, but just trying to keep from getting any kind of a hard line, but just deepening around the top of that nose again so that it pops out better. Okay, and I just feel like I need more color in the bone here. So an easy fix for that would be just to kind of stipple either with your wave angle or your wave, just a little bit more of the raw sienna in there. I just want to get a little bit more color, so I'm going to kind of come in with it, just kind of tap it in. Remember, we shaded the one or highlighted the one side, so I'm going to just kind of tap in the raw sienna on the other side. Just get a little bit more color in that bump on the other side there, because I just don't feel I had enough just with the floated shadow alone. So it's just a matter of tweaking the colors. And I still feel like the mouth is just kind of sticking out too much, so I think I'll do the same with that. I'm going to just stipple some of my raw sienna just on the one side of the muzzle and the chin area. I think that'll kind of soften that, take away the harshness. And the other area to check would be the right side or the left side of your forehead too. See if you want to just stipple a little bit more of the raw sienna on that side. And you may not be able to tell till you get your neck in there, if your face is done. So get as much of it as you can, and then you've got to stand back away from it and look at the whole thing. Oh, I know one other thing I didn't do on the nose. I didn't put the nose hair in there. And I think probably let's just use the either light buttermilk or warm white and a little liner brush. And I'm just kind of overlapping like they're coming out from the center area here. So I'm just getting little teeny bits of hair coming out into the nostril. And then I can set the ends of it back down in with a wash of black after. Just a little bit in there, and we'll let that dry. Their chins are going to have little chin hairs too afterwards, but probably better to get the neck done so that we don't, because we might kind of mess into them, but I'll just show you quick that Mama I could probably get in, just the little chin hairs, same color, light buttermilk or warm white, either one, and just little individual lines coming out from the chin. Okay, otherwise, let's do the lashes. They have the most gorgeous lashes. And I just want you to really look at the direction that they're going. And they really come off the outer edge. They're real big, sweepy, long lashes. When you pull the lash, you're going to pull from the top of the eye line off to the side, not up in the air. You're going to pull them sideways. Okay, and we're going to use a liner brush. Now, some of the lashes may end up going into, a black area so you can't see them. However, sometimes I go back and add a little bit of either gray or white and make them show up a little bit more, but like they're catching some sunlight. But you're starting on the eyelid line and just a little curve off to the side, but great big long ones in the outer corners. And then you'll get smaller as you go in towards the nose or the middle of the face. And they really do look like they've got false eyelashes. They're just absolutely gorgeous. So and you've got to reverse directions on the other side. They pull to the outside, and you're pulling them sideways. And the ones in the corner are the longest. So they go on the mama, on the left side, it goes right into the ear, right over the ear. Whether you see it or not, you need to just follow through with the motion. So it all depends on what color you've got in your ear where it's overlapping. Get smaller as you go in towards the nose. And the bottom lashes are gonna also kind of curve to the side. They don't have to be as long, but they kind of curve up a little bit towards the eye and then out. There again, they'll be shorter, closer to the nose. Not as long as the ones on top. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do on the neck is in this center section, in the white area or that beigey area, I'm going to be stippling between the spots with some warm white or light buttermilk. What I want to do is be able to puff that forward. And I don't have to do the spots right now. I just need to go between them. So whether you're using a regular filbert or the wave filbert, I'm just going to get that stippled in, kind of like, you know, how we stippled in the horns up on top to begin with. It's just that we're avoiding the spots. And it was much easier to put the spots in and go near them than to do all that highlight and then come back and put the spots on. So I just want to kind of taper it a little bit off to each side. So it's like the center third of the spots, or between the spots that you are stippling this color. Center third of the neck. Can be a little bit heavier in the dead center. And then just kind of taper it off to each side. So you're kind of getting rid of those black spots now in the dead center. They're disappearing if you had any showing. And the spots don't need to look smooth on the edges, so it's okay if you come right up against the edges as you're stippling. But wherever you end on the sides, just let it kind of taper off a little here and there so that you don't see a definite stopping point. So all those center areas. Get all the way down to the bottom on Mama here too. And I will on Mama here, I'll probably put a wash across the bottom to fade that into the canvas more, but I still like to have that little bit of dimension going on, even though I may be putting a wash through it. So I'm not going to be quite as concerned how well I do at the bottom half of her neck, because I will be putting a shadow down there, but you still kind of see the through the shadow a little bit. But I also have leaves coming up from the bottom of her neck too, so really sinks her down into the canvas. And then when it comes to the spots, I want to stipple with the raw sienna, but I'm going to switch to just a regular filbert, I think. Now, if you were to imagine, if I were to cover up with my hand on each side, those center areas, that's where the highlight's going, because I want it to be the same area as I did my white. So if you need to take your hand as a reminder and just kind of put it there as you do your highlights in your spots. And I'm just gonna get some of the, so just kind of tap that in, that center area there. So right, it's like I've got a line going right down through the middle of the neck. So some of the spots might have it in the middle, some might have it on a side. It depends on where it hits in the highlight area. So this one's going to be more like in the middle. Keep on coming down. This one I'm just catching I'm just catching corners there. And I can same thing on the baby. So none of the ones on the outer edge are going to have this. I might just have a little bit of an edge here and there, towards the center of those other ones, but otherwise all the middle ones are the ones that have the most of this. Nothing on the very outer edge. Okay, so when you go to do the mane, you just use your rake brush if you want. And I'm just going to do different combinations of the earth tones, just like we did in the little hair up on top of the horns there. So I'll start with, I'll kind of go from dark to lighter. The burnt umber probably won't show up, but let me just try it here. See if it shows or not. Just use a rake. Well, it kind of does. Just enough to be subtle. I don't know if you can see the wet. Okay, now this stage doesn't have to be thin lines. This can be a little thicker, but kind of wispy where I end out. So what I do is I start next to the neck, and then I just kind of flip it out away from the giraffe. It'll be the next colors I'll be a little more careful with. But I think it still helps to have that layer even though you don't see it. But then I would go to the burnt sienna and then the raw sienna. I just got to kind of look at the whole thing. So burnt umber, then some burnt sienna. Just kind of making some wispy curves right off the edge. And I don't even mind if I'm doing wet on wet on this, because I don't mind if it picks up some of the previous color. So I'll just kind of go ahead and do it start to finish. I did burnt umber, then burnt sienna, now some raw sienna. And then I'll see if I need anything lighter after that. But I think that's going to do it. I don't think I'm going to want a whole lot lighter. We will be, once that's dry, we'll be floating some burnt umber to set it into the neck better. But you decide. If you feel it's not showing up enough, you could add just a touch of your warm white or your light buttermilk into the raw sienna to lighten it up a bit. But mine, I think, is going to show up enough. And it does look like I added just a touch of, on the original, just a touch of the buttermilk into the raw sienna, just mainly on the tips, just to get those tips to show up a little better. But don't let it take over. And if you needed to put some little, individual lines with your liner brush, you sure could. But the mane kind of fades into the background a little bit because of the darkness of the background. And I think instead of floating the color from the neck, I'm going to just go back and put some burnt umber, just little strokes from the neck into the mane. So rather than waiting for all that to dry, if I just take some burnt umber and I start by the neck and just pull out a little ways into that mane, that's going to set it down in because I will be floating the burnt umber on the neck itself. But if we get this closer to the neck, just shorter little burnt umber lines, then the mane is done. Now it's not going to look like much till you get the rest of the neck done, so you just got to be patient and not play with it too much till you get your neck in there. Should probably just do it now while I got it on screen. Just a little touch of a black float on that inside edges of your nose hairs, just to make sure that those lines set down into the nose better. Let me show you how the shading now changes that neck. Going to be shading with burnt umber, and I'm just going to get a little fresh out here so I'm not struggling with it. Get a little clean napkin to blend on too. Okay, now I'm going to use a angle brush, but I am going to moisten, so make sure that your spots and everything are real dry. But I'm going to just moisten with water because I've got a longer area I'm trying to float. So the first thing I want to do is I want to float the burnt umber along the back side next to the mane. Okay, so I'm going to go right from the face all the way down, so I no longer see that light color next to the mane. Look at how that sets that in on that side. It just pushes it right back down in, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Going to moisten, and I'm going to float down the other side of the neck as well. Burnt umber. Nice and dark on the outer edge, so it looks like the edge of the neck is melting right into the background color. So that'll be the first step. Both of your giraffes, you float the burnt umber on both sides. Make sure that it's dark enough where next to the black that it's hard to kind of tell where the black is and the neck stopped. That already starts to round out your neck. Yeah, I'm gonna use a larger brush to corner load and float down on Mama's neck because I want to make sure that that color comes in a ways. But nice and dark on the edge next to the black. So that really sets it down in. And don't worry if you mess into the black, it's going to fade right into it. But I want it to come in a little ways into the neck. Really get that nice and dark coming down the edges. And if you're too light, quickly blow dry it, try it again. Because you really want it to be a dramatic color change. Now I'm going to turn it upside down to do the other side of Mama's neck. So corner load of the burnt umber. Get it real dark next to the mane. And then I really want on Mama, I want it to really be dark on the bottom half of the neck. So I'm going to put a nice great big wash of this burnt umber down there as well. Really kind of go through that whole area, and it's probably at least a hand width up. Get that to be darker down there. I'm going to be putting some leaves in that area. See if you can just kind of melt it up a little higher. But that whole bottom area needs to have a wash of burnt umber over it. I want it to eventually just kind of sink into the background. So go all the way to like where the baby's ear is. That whole bottom section below baby's ear can be darker. So what I did was I start with floating the burnt umber next to the face. I'm on the neck, but I'll start with right up against the face, all the way through to the other side of the neck. And get that first. Then I'm going to create some wrinkles coming into the neck. So still doing a corner load, and I want you to think of a little hook. And I'm just pulling up and creating wrinkles with a float. You can have as many as you want. That's probably enough on baby. But I'm just pulling up and then kind of going to a chisel edge where I stop. And that's how I get the wrinkles in their neck. Same thing on Mama. I'll start next to the face first. Get the shadow in up against the face. Still using burnt umber, and I'm using my 1/2 inch angle brush. Okay, and when I do the wrinkle, the corner that has the color on it is pointing towards the face, and I do a little hook and then pull up a chisel. A little hook and pull up a chisel. And they're wrinkles, so they're not all the same. Looks better if they're each just a little bit different. You can put as many on there as you want. I'm probably going to put more on Mama than on the baby, I think. Let them each stop at a different, stopping point. More of a chisel where you're stopping it to get those wrinkles. And I might tuck one more in here. There we go. Okay, and the only other thing I want to do on the neck is I feel like I need to get some of that raw sienna color in there a little bit more like I have in on the face. And so I'm just going to do little washes um, to tint here and there. And I can just use a filbert brush, but I'm just going to pull just some little washes of raw sienna and probably mostly in, those beigey areas. Just adding little washes, maybe coming out from the shadows, just to pull some more of that color into the neck so that, just very, very light, really watered down. Very, very light wash, but make sure that your burnt umber is dry so that when you kind of pull through some of those shadow areas that it's not going to lift what you've got there, but it needed to just have a little bit more of that color coming in to make it look like it's closer to the color in the face. All right. So when I look at mine, one more thing that I just feel I need, especially on Mama, I feel like I need a little bit more of that burnt sienna up in the face somewhere. So probably a good spot would be to just even stipple it on the side of the nose here. And it doesn't need to be a lot. Maybe just blot it with my finger a little bit. I just want to get a little bit of that color. So I'm just kind of tinting right now with it, and I could wash it in too. I could even pull some of this in a little bit more into the, top tips here. That might help. Get a little bit more up in that area. And maybe just a little bit more. I want a little more maybe on the side of the face, like right around in here, just to kind of transition that color a little bit more. Just blot it with my finger a little, maybe a little bit on that chin area too. Just kind of, that way it kind of flows a little better, I think. And there again, I could do the same on the baby, maybe get a little bit more on the edge of the face there. Little wash of the burnt sienna just to kind of carry it through the rest of the design a little better. All right, so that's it for the giraffes. The last thing on here is doing all the little leaves. Now, they are easier to do with um, a wave angle brush, okay? You could do anything, but these are, it's just like I'm creating wallpaper in the background. So I'm just going to get a little bit closer here, maybe turn it a little sideways, and I'm going to show you how to do it. The leaves are coming in at all different angles. I've just got them curving in from, the top down, flip-flopping. So I really don't trace anything on. I just start with one stem and keep adding and filling up till all the space is filled up. And I'm going to be using my earth tone colors. So burnt sienna, raw sienna, And then if I need to, I'll put a little touch of buttermilk in there as well. Okay, now my palette is a mess, so I really want to start with fresh paint. You can't do this with old dry paint. It has to be fresh. Okay, now the wave angle brushes, they come in all different sizes. So it just depends on what size you want your leaf to be. Okay, I'm going to put the palette on top here so you can see me better. Okay, so I want burnt sienna and I want raw sienna. I want some light buttermilk maybe. Now another color that's really pretty, and I didn't use it, is yellow deep. There we go. That has a little bit more orange in it. So if I were to take my raw sienna and put a little bit of a bright orange in it, you're going to come up with that yellow deep. All right. It just gives it a little more pizzazz than raw sienna. Okay, and then I want some either light buttermilk or warm white. So I've got my earth tones here. Okay, now when I go to use this brush, okay, this has like the little wavy lines. Now when I get up on the tips, I can pull like little grasses. Of course, I'm on paper and it's just sucking it in. This is what I use to do my zebra fur. So the zebras that you see that I've got in packets, I pull sideways to create the stripes in the zebras. And then you get that look that it, fur connecting in between. And for some reason, the angle feels easier to do than the flat wave. Okay, but here today, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to put pressure on the short end of the brush. I'm going to squish it all the way down, point that toe. That's how I make the leaf. Okay, so if I can either use a liner or I can just drag with the chisel. Okay, so if I've got paint in the brush, I'm going to squish down on the short end, point the toe. That's how I'm making these leaves, quick and easy. Now I'll go ahead and I will load with different colors too. So I'll get, some raw sienna, and so that I'm getting more than one color coming off. Pick up. So it's really cool. You don't even have to clean the brush. Just keep picking up different amounts of color. But that's how you make those leaves. Quick and easy. And I just want lots of variation of color going on throughout the piece. So I'm going to just start with, I just want them to curve. So I'll start with one. I'll just curve a line. Squish, squish, squish. All the way down the line. Just keep picking up more color. Just want a variety of colors going on in the background. So, and then I'll just pick up another color, and, I'm just kind of flip-flopping, in and out with the different, so maybe I'm going to pull a line there this time. But it's much easier using the wave angle than it is a regular angle brush. But try it. I mean, try it on your palette. See if it works. And if I've got little spaces in between, I'll just add little fillers here and there. So I just want to keep going and just curving them off different directions. And I could do the leaves first and then come back and do the, stems if I want to. But it's a real quick, easy way to, add a background border. It's just a fun brush, really fun brush. When it feels really gunky and yucky, then stop and clean it and, start with a fresh load again. But I'm just pointing the toe away to create those leaves.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Okay, so that is basically it for the project. So you've just got to go through and get all that background in there. Thank you for joining me and watching my giraffe canvas lesson. Be sure to check out my other videos on YouTube, Jillybean Fitzhenry, or on my website, www.jillybean.net.